Our Across the Aisle segment tonight, Democratic National Committee Chairman Tom Perez made a shocking announcement this week that the Democrats won't back pro-life candidates. Perez's announcement shows just how far Democrats have gone on abortion, from a party that once said it should be safe, legal, but rare, to now requiring endorsement of abortion on demand. With me now, Democratic strategist and former Georgia State Representative LaDawn Jones. Representative Jones, good to see you.
How are you, Liz?
I'm doing well. Representative Jones, I was frankly shocked at this statement from Tom Perez. I mean, there are parts of the Democratic Party, certainly, even the majority of the party, although not by much, that are pro-abortion. But to now say that pro-life Democrats aren't welcome in the party or aren't fit for office, that's redefining the whole party, in my opinion.
I'll tell you, Tom Perez has made it difficult for Democrats like me who have a Christian background, who want to grow the party, who want us to remain a party of inclusiveness. You know, I understand his role as a leader where he has to really identify who we are as Democrats so that Democrats don't just become people who are anti-Republican. But at the same time, I think he's not listening to what happened in November. And in November, there was a loud cry that we are missing big parts of the party. Right now is not a time to push people away, but rather as a leader to try to find something that brings us all together.
Right, because, I mean, basically what he said, and if you interpreted this differently, please let me know, but it seemed to me he was defining the Democratic Party that their core value was the party of abortion. And that, I mean, that excludes so many people. Not only numerically does it exclude, I think 28% of Democrats identify as pro-life. If you're Catholic, you can't be Democrat because Catholic teachings is pro-life. If you're evangelical Christian, you know, you're not welcome in the Democratic Party. If you're a scientific secularist, you know, who thinks that life begins at conception, you're not welcome in the Democratic Party. In a sense, it was shocking, but if that's what he wants his party to be, I guess his honesty is refreshing.
Yeah, you know, so on one hand, he's elected, right? So he does technically speak for the Democrats. But as a Democratic principled person, he doesn't quite speak for me. And let me tell you why. That kind of hard stance reminds me so much of the conservative gun rights, no compromise stance, right? Even when we're talking about mental health and things related to gun safety, they won't even discuss it. That kind of hard stance is very difficult, particularly around the issue of abortion. What would have been better as a Democratic platform is this decision has already been made in the United States. And so Democrats should come around making sure that we provide funding for Planned Parenthood and other programs that educate women and work on women's health rather than focusing on something so divisive.
Right, and I that's where it surprised me, because like I said, it seemed to me that he tried to make abortion the defining principle of his party. And I understand that the Democratic Party gets a lot of donations from the abortion lobby, or so it's called, from Planned Parenthood and other organizations whose primary goal is to champion abortion. And that's fine, that's their right to do so under constitutional law. But I mean, 80% of Americans, and that includes people who identify as pro-abortion, think that late-term abortion is wrong. I would even argue that in that final presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, when they were both asked about late-term abortion, when Hillary Clinton refused to say that she condemned the practice of late-term abortion up until the moment before birth, when she just kind of, you know, rambled a little bit on, oh, well, maybe something terrible has been discovered, that's a terrible choice. I mean, that turned off a majority of Americans, probably 8 out of 10 people who watched that debate. And now Tom Perez is just doubling down on that.
Well, you know, so one thing we have to clarify is that groups like Planned Parenthood and the Democrats are not pro-abortion as abortion is a mandatory requirement to be a Democrat. However, they are in support of making sure that women understand their health issues. Here's the thing. We're spending so much time going back and forth, pro-choice, pro-life. What we're missing is the opportunity to do the research to find out how many women, if educated with the right type of resources, if they had clinics and other places near them rather than being pushed further away by these horrible laws, that we probably will have far fewer late-term abortions and we will be arguing about nothing. But we keep getting caught up in the politics, and Tom Perez fell right for the bait again.
Right, and it's sad. I mean, late-term abortions, you'd think in our day and age, like you said, that it would be a thing of the past in a sense, but 13,000 late-term abortions happen every year in our country. 13,000 babies who are viable are aborted every year in our country. And Tom Perez, I mean, I know you said that that's not what Planned Parenthood stands for, just abortion, even though their president, Cecile Richards, said that it's a vital part of what they do. And Tom Perez now just said that they're not going to support any candidate, any Democratic candidate running for office. Doesn't that worry you as a Democrat, that even perhaps in the Deep South, where people, you know, are more religious, they are more pro-life, even if they identify with the Democratic Party, that they're going to start losing voters?
Actually, I do. I agree with you, Liz, and let me tell you why. There are people just like myself who have a hard time fitting within a box. And as I mentioned before, in many ways, I'm a Democrat because I'm not a Republican. Some of the hard
Right.
issues and ways that Republicans feel, I just cannot get on board. A lot of things that Donald Trump espoused, I cannot get on board, right? But then if I'm pushed in the same way from the Democratic Party, there's people like me who start feeling disillusioned. I think it was really this is something that you have to support your base, but I think we really need to roll back. Let's talk to these 13,000 women per year that are having these late term abortions. Can we fix that issue and get away from the politics of it all? It was a dangerous road. And if Tom Perez is listening, I would really say that this is something he really probably should poll people outside of his executive committee and look at what the rest of America is saying, just like we didn't do back in November.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, amen. We should be talking to these 13,000 women, and I'm really grateful for the organizations, mostly pro-life organizations, honestly, crisis pregnancy centers that do try to counsel these women and don't push them towards abortion. But let me ask you this. Who do you think Perez was pandering to? You know, the leaders of the parties tend to talk to their bases. Their bases, sometimes they get entrenched in who the establishment is, who's funding it, where the power lies. Who exactly was he pandering to? Was he pandering to places like Planned Parenthood who give him so much money?
Well, the Democratic base that believes, and I don't disagree with this, that the government, although it may be a moral right, it may be an issue where we want of education, the government needs to get out of women's bodies and dictating what happens to them, particularly with our government being made up of so many men. So pandering, he is talking to his base, where we all agree. Get out of women's business. That's not the role of government as it relates to.
That's what I'm saying. Let me interrupt just for a second. That's what I'm saying. I mean, the Democratic Party, 28% of people who identify as Democratic voters think that it's not just a matter of one woman here, that it's not just the government staying out of one woman's body, because I don't think anyone on either side of the aisle theoretically disagrees with that. But people that identify as pro-life think that there's two bodies involved, two people involved, the woman and the child, a living human being that's a separate, independent, autonomous person, and that person, that unborn person, doesn't have any choice when it comes to abortion. 28%, almost a third of Democratic voters feel that way too.
Yes, but again, if you have to ask the question whether or not our government should be involved in speaking for this second person that you mentioned, that has been decided, has long been decided in our country. And as Democrats, we support the decisions of the Supreme Court in Roe versus Wade, and that's how we should move forward. And
right, but as you know, I mean, in the history of our nation, there have been laws in the past that have been incorrect, both morally and constitutionally. So I don't think it does the American people any good for us to just accept without questioning laws that we really think are faulty or flawed. I mean, there have been Supreme Court decisions that have been overturned. As science has advanced, and we know now that an unborn baby has an independent, unique DNA just to them, that there's no other point from the moment of conception till birth that would, make a person, make the difference between it being not a person and a person. Isn't it time that we reevaluate, especially when such an overwhelming majority of Americans think so?
Maybe so, but then here's where the problem comes in, because then we start getting laws and state legislatures that close down clinics and make it more difficult for a woman to get the help that she needs of any type. And then you start to make an offensive move, right? Rather than a move that is really made for the intended purpose. When you start doing those kind of things, then we say, well, we can't change our laws.
What about if we separated the two? What about if we made sure that there were federally funded community health clinics that were easily accessible to women, especially low-income women, and then separated that from the idea of abortion and really re-examined that as a country to see, is this a separate person and does this person have rights? Because isn't that what the fundamental of our system of law and justice is based on, that one person cannot violate another person's right, even if that person is smaller or unborn or can't talk or has no way to speak up for themselves?
Well, to your point, this is why Perez's comments are so difficult. Maybe we do need to re-examine these two separate parts, but the first step in doing that is, the first step is to get these state legislatures that are primarily Republican run to stop putting forth this type of legislation that creates a bigger issue. So we can't get down to the topics, because Democrats aren't putting forth bills in order to make it easier. There's the Republicans that are making these really odd moves. Let's stop that practice first, and then we can see that there's sincerity to solving the issue, and we can come to the table and get some stuff done if the Democrats, Tom Perez included, are willing to come to the table as well.
Right, if they put the ideological purity aside. And I guess I would just slightly disagree with you. I think when it's a matter of life and death, that should be the thing that starts first, not worrying about, funding or bills or statewide thing. If someone's life is at risk, that's what we need to focus on first. Representative Jones, thanks so much for being on the show. It's always great to talk to you.